So in keeping with our May timeline, with the whole school and graduation thing going on, the next film obviously reminds us of how horrible high school really can be and how much we are just dying to get out of there. So I wanted to take a quick look at 2000's Battle Royale. I'm pretty sure most of you are already familiar with this film. So the film was directed by Kenji Fukusaku, and he basically just chose this project because it reminded him of something that had happened during his high school days. Obviously this was during World War II for him, and he and his classmates had been recruited to, I guess, sort of work on weapons assembly, and just sort of discovering they had been lied to, having to stay there and eventually bury their own classmates. He developed a disdain for adults, which did last him a very long time. So this film obviously did touch base for him, and obviously one of the main reasons why he wanted to do this. So basically the students of Class 3B have been selected to partake in the Battle Royale game, which is basically something that was set up, I guess, by adults to try to control unruly youth. So they basically are drugged during a school trip and taken to a facility. They are given the rules about the game. Obviously they must stay out of certain danger zones. Anyone who tries to tamper with their collars will cause it to detonate and they will die. And the first actual death we see is obviously from their previous teacher, Kitano, who basically just kills a student on the spot for speaking during the rules video and disrupting the video. Oddly enough, it's very peppy and very upbeat, although the roles are just very grim, and it's a very serious scene in the film, but it definitely does mix lighter moments with the heavy, so it has a good balance. So the students are just basically called by number and sent out. They also do discover that they have two transfer students, one which happens to be a total psycho, and somebody who is more empathetic. We later realize that these two persons actually have previously played the game, and Kawada, the more sympathetic person, is actually just sort of in it as more of a revenge thing, trying to avenge being forced to kill his girlfriend, as obviously there can be only one person surviving, otherwise everyone will die. So the students are sent out with supplies on this remote island. They do have a map, food, they have been given a weapon, although some are not as helpful as others. Some people have knives, some have sickles, some people wind up with megaphones or pot lids or binoculars, which is just very odd and funny. There's one guy who winds up with a GPS, which does prove to be very useful later. The film also does feature a kill count, so it does give the name and class ranking of the student which has died, as well as the remaining amount that are left to go. So they basically have 3 days to kill each other and have one declared winner. So pretty much just straight out of the facility, the students start killing each other. There's one pair who the next day meet each other. They were obviously dating, and she is obviously injured. She's dying. She asks her boyfriend if he still cares for her. He says he does, but she presses the issue and asks if there actually was anyone else. He confesses there was, so obviously he didn't really care for her too much. But it's high school. Fidelity is probably too much to ask for, although for some adults that also does apply. Eventually Kawada does meet up with Noriko and Shuya and decides to help them. Meanwhile, the one guy who did have the GPS sets up shop somewhere else, and he's sort of just trying to break into the facility or just shut down everything just to sort of try to nullify the game. So eventually in the ending sequence, obviously the whole system's been shut down. Kawada informs Noriko and Shuya that there actually are microphones in their collars, so they fake a few deaths, and Kawada goes back to the facility. The game is declared as ended, as it's assumed that he is the winner. Eventually the other two do show up. Everyone confronts Kintano, and it's during this point that he confesses that he always saw Noriko as being a daughter, since obviously he's been rejected by his own daughter. She never really cared for him too much, just sort of very distant and rude. He at one point does pull out a weapon. They do shoot him. He isn't dead, but he is in the process of dying. During this time he receives a phone call from his daughter, just lets her know he's not going to be around, pulls out a real weapon from his pocket and shoots himself. The first weapon that he had threatened them with was actually just a water pistol, which was just pretty funny. So obviously the film was released in 2000. Recently there has been a big explosion with talk about the film. And reason being, the film had been tested in the US to see how US audiences would respond. Unfortunately, this was during the time of the Columbine shooting, so it wasn't too well received. Obviously, it wasn't the right time, had a lot of negative responses, and some comparisons to the responses that Battle Royale received can be compared to Clockwork Orange or Straw Dogs, just response-wise, obviously, but film definitely does have a lot of teen angst-type themes. It definitely does deal with the disillusionment of adolescence into adulthood. Rather, it could be viewed as a metaphor for adolescent life. Obviously, things are just, a lot more emotionally charged. Everything just seems so much more stressful, but I can definitely see a correlation between Battle Royale and an S.E. Hinton novel. Obviously, if you're familiar with, Rumblefish, That Was Then, This Is Now, The Outsiders, they do carry a lot of similar themes. But I also do see it as being very similar along the lines of Lord of the Flies as well. I can definitely, that's definitely very obvious. And in 2008, there had been talk of New Line doing an American remake of Battle Royale. Obviously, that received very negative response, and they put it on the back burner for a bit. They were trying to still keep up with that, but it's been permanently just terminated now that the Hunger Games film and the book obviously have come into play. So just to avoid any further comparisons, they've just sort of buried that. But during the summer of 2012, CW did announce plans to try and do a Battle Royale TV show. So that would definitely be very interesting. I'd really like to see how that pans out. So the film obviously did gain very early cult status due to the difficulty of being able to purchase the film in the US. We really didn't get an official release until March of 2012. 2003 saw the sequel of Battle Royale II, Requiem, although there is an extended version just referred to as Battle Royale Revenge. The sequel is credited as director being Kenji as well as Kenta Fukasawa. Obviously, we have two directors because Kenji, the original director, or the father, passed away due to cancer, only got a chance to record or film the first scene, and his son Kenta, who had written the screenplay for the first Battle Royale as the sequel, took over, dedicated the film to his father. And I can definitely see the reason for wanting to honor his father, do the follow-through, but it's not really a very strong story. The characters are not that interesting either. They're just sort of misfits or low-lives types of people that you would see in a detention center. So they've obviously been recruited for Battle Royale 2, and the rules have been amended. Obviously, Shuya has gone off, created somewhat of a rebellion or a terrorist group trying to take down the whole Battle Royale, and they're known as the Wild Seven. So this new class has basically been recruited to do the government's dirty work. They are sent there to kill the Seven, and that would signal the end of the game. This time they're set in pairs of 2 by class, so obviously Boy 1 and Girl 2 are a pair. And we later do discover that if one of the pair dies, the other by default goes along with them. They are sent by boat to the island. They are quickly picked off by the Seven, just assuming that they are military because they are wearing gear. And it's later discovered that they are students when someone does notice the collar. Eventually the students do join the Seven, and the military does go out there just to try to finish up their own dirty work themselves. Obviously, for some reason, there are women and children there. They do escape by way of a mine shaft. Some of the students do return to just see the thing out and finish off. They eventually do win over. They kill off the last remaining military. And the film ends. They're obviously in some Middle Eastern country. It's not really too clear where exactly they are, but the separated groups do meet with each other. I believe it was about a 7-month gap that they were separated, but they eventually do meet up, go off their own separate ways, and form their own lives. So this film definitely does have a lot more kill scenes. Within the first 30 minutes, we lose half of the class. So it's just a very tight-knit group that carries us through the rest of the film. This does run about 2 hours. It's a fairly decent story. I preferred the first one a lot more. Where can you go from there? I mean, obviously you have to touch on a lot of similar themes, so it does become repetitive at times, but There are a fair amount of murders and gore, but the first one is definitely a lot more brutal, has a lot more serious tone. So between the two, I'm leaning more towards the first, but still a fairly good film. But that is pretty much all I have for you guys today. I will talk to you later.